Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Fellow seekers after truth and uh, faultless warriors, travel companions in the nether regions of the strange and the weird, and the basic substrate of reality on our regular No Small Talk Sunday. Well, today, for you who have been following these podcasts for a long time, and we've discussed all kinds of crazy subjects and deep dives into the nature of reality and quantum physics and all the rest. Our present broadcast on a new integrated approach to pulling many of those things that I've spent whole live streams in the past talking about, like the idea that consciousness arrives in vibrational resonances inside the microtubules of each of the cells in your body, or each of the neuron cells in your brain have microtubules that are in a state of resonance, and that resonance is what gives rise to piezoelectric discharges, because these are crystalline structures. And what's driving the crystalline structures to produce these electrical discharges, piezoelectrical discharges, which we're reading as brainwaves, are pressure waves, sound waves coming from the thalamus. The thalamus are two globular areas at the top of the brainstem, on either side of the brainstem, that are like Grand Central Station, that takes signals coming up the spinal cord from the spinal tracts from all over my body and routes them out like a projection screen onto the gray matter of the cortex to specific areas for finer degrees of discrimination and decision making and stuff like that. And the quantum field and the depths of the quantum field and quantum foam, that 95% of the universe appears to be empty, appears to be space, but in actuality it's not empty at all. There are what's called vacuum fluctuations in the quantum field. They call it dark matter and dark energy, and that makes up 95% of what's going on out there, which mirrors, sort of like a fractal and a hologram, how the brain itself is functioning in the default mode network. The default function of the brain, 95% of all brain function, is under the hood in this default mode function, or the four sort of zones in the brain that define my sense of self in time and space. And the referencing of how the brain is put together and how the cellular processes are put together and how the microtubules and the piezoelectric effect and all of that stuff is mirrored in the universe at large is a continuing mind-blowing exploration of that continually yields more and more depth and proof of the deep connection of all things together. And the resonance fields that link things together again and again and again come back to a fundamental law of physics that called coupled oscillators, that the whole universe and everything in it is attempting to dance together to save energy. So everything is synchronizing up in all kinds of different modes of harmonics, all according to music theory, harmonics and overtones and the law of octaves, the law of sympathetic resonance and all the rest, all come together now with this new theory, that we're going to talk about today, that is qualia. a hypothetical thing called the Qualia Field, similar to what we talk about as the quantum field throughout all the universe. There's also the Qualia Field. One could be thought upon as the quantity of things in the universe, and qualia would be the quality of things throughout the whole universe. Those two aspects of the yin-yang of reality. And we're going to talk about the qualia of reality, which I'm telling you is a trip that challenges any trip we've been on so far. This might be the craziest trip of all. And so therefore, it behooves me to even bypass the weird hat that I usually have to put on when we're about to go someplace completely weird and strange like today. Today is going to be the psychedelic mad scientist glasses, because this is about where we're about to go. Where we're going today is going to make Alice in Wonderland look small. So with that being said, here we go. Qualia. What is qualia anyway? Qualia is the subjective individual experiences of perception of consciousness. Everything we experience with all of our senses and beyond has a quality to that experience. So yes, we can say that I'm sitting in the woods and I'm feeling the grass on my bare legs, and I can see a butterfly, and I can feel the wind, and I can smell the woods, and I can feel the temperature of the day. But my experience of all those things is unique to me, and no other person in the entire universe sitting in exactly the same position that I am, in this, say, picture. Anybody that you replace this person with someone else would experience a completely different universe and world. There would be certain things that we all agree on because we're creating reality from a deep connection together at a collective unconscious level, where we're all, by consensus vote, creating the reality about us. So in this case, we're all agreeing that there is trees and a forest and a butterfly, but our personal experience of that forest and the grass and the butterfly and the smell and the air and the heat we feel in our skin is unique and different, and no two people experience the same thing. So in reality, there's an interesting synchronicity between a reality that we are all agreeing on and the perceptions of that reality that are unique and different for each person. The qualia is our unique perception of a universe that nobody else is getting. So back to 4,000 years ago in Sanskrit, where it's discussed that in a hypothetical time before God existed, there was an infinite field of all possibilities, all probabilities. And at some point, all of them popped into existence simultaneously in multiple dimensions, and each dimension is an infinite field of planets and nebula and beings alive on planets, having experiences, all experiencing every story that could ever be told simultaneously throughout the universe, and all past time and all future time all rolled into the present. God divided into an infinite number of finite pieces, and each of those pieces is a shard of the total personality, experiencing reality from an infinite number of standpoints at once. And each one of those experiences and each one of those infinite shards is a different experience of the same thing. A qualia, a quality of the experience of each individual part, experiencing something that is common and different at the same time. That's the conundrum of qualia. Science is unable to explain the quality of an individual's experience that is completely different than someone else's. When I see an apple, I see something red with some spots on it, and anybody else would see an apple that is also red. But what color red and what color spots would be different for each person, colored by an almost infinite number of layers of things that are going on in the brain, including all my past experiences with red and apples. That's a unique color, a unique qualia of my personal experience of reality. Qualia. Qualia are the high-order perceptions of qualities, such as the warmth of warm or the redness of red, painfulness of the pain, that are experienced by an individual in normal conscious states. What it is like to taste a specific apple, this particular apple right now, is different for everyone. The finger cannot touch itself because it's touching itself all the time. The tongue cannot taste itself because it's tasting itself all the time. And similarly, I find it hard to know myself from a visceral level because I'm in myself all the time. The only way that you can do that is to step outside of the part of you that processes information about who you think you are, with opinions and definitions, and that's what the deepest states of meditation are there to try to achieve, is a transcendent experience outside of the ordinary, where I get an objective view of myself outside of my normal processing centers that tell me who I am. Because all those are happening in time and space, and the only thing that's real about me is the present moment outside of time and space, here, now, simultaneous with the moment. That defies explanation, because explanations are thought processes in the brain firing neurons, and those all take time. And so by the time I've generated the thought of me, it's already passed, and the present moment is here before that thought. So as soon as I have a thought, I've brought myself out of that now experience, back into time and space, having an opinion about or a definition of an experience that I had when I was in the moment, and allowing myself to have that ordinary conscious experience about a moment of enlightenment brings me out of the enlightenment, because now I'm back in time and space, having a thought about it and describing it and rejoicing about it and all the rest. How does the water of the brain turn into the wine of consciousness? This question is about as old as you can imagine. It's really what the ancient alchemists were all about, and the whole concept of the philosopher's stone. These were all allegories about the chemistry of the soul, the chemistry of the body, the chemistry that goes on in consciousness. Now we have names for that, those neurochemicals. Endogenous morphine, that's endorphins, or serotonin, or endogenous DMT. The brain manufactures psychedelic compounds. But what kicks that off is being in a certain state. So once you can use some kind of technique in order to bring you to that state, you pick the lock of neural programs that unlock the alchemy lab in your own mind and generate these magical chemical concoctions that cause awakening experiences. Now, frontiers of human neuroscience. Qualia and phenomenal consciousness arise from the information structure of an electromagnetic field in the brain. This statement is a little misleading because it appears almost as if they're saying that consciousness arrives from electrical firings of neurons in the brain. And that Newtonian view of consciousness is pretty old hat at this point. Quantum physics has definitely proved otherwise, that consciousness does not arrive from electrical activity of neurons firing in the brain, that it's the other way around, that consciousness is in synchronicity with physical processes in the brain that reflect what's happening in the conscious field that's playing through the brain so that I can have an experience. But consciousness is not coming from those electrical firings. The electrical firings are coming from consciousness. It's the other way around. And the fact that they're talking about qualia here means that they understand that, and that this qualia and phenomenal consciousness arise from information structure and electromagnetic field in the brain. As you see further in this article, they're saying that the electrical fields in the brain are in sync with a qualia field in the universe that's playing the brain like a violin. Extremely rapid functions of the brain suggest it processes information through a mechanism not yet understood. Now, in previous broadcasts, I've touched on this subject, that the unimaginable speed and capacity of the brain, functioning sort of in one way like a quantum computer that can make an infinite number of calculations all at the same time and choose which one is the best for this moment instantaneously, is pretty mind-blowing. The capacity of the brain is able to do that, but then we have discovered recently, as I mentioned, I think in the last broadcast, that the brain has got 6 layers of neurons in the gray matter, and each of those layers has neurons that are generating brainwave frequencies. So we've got 7 brains, 6 brains all layered on top of each other, all functioning like a brain. So whatever we thought the brain was capable of, it's six times more than that, at least, because the gray matter that's connecting everything together we thought was just cables, but it's also involved in the process of making decisions about which neurons fire and which ones don't. So it's part of that decision-making process. So it's way bigger than we ever thought it was before. And as we're about to see, qualia, it's bigger than even that. Unsolved mysteries of neuroscience, the binding problem, how all the parts of the brain come together so that you have a unified perception of the world, is one of the unsolved mysteries in neuroscience. Now, we've discussed this before too, right? Most of that mystery has been solved with the discovery of gamma brainwave activity, and in particular, because gamma was called the binding frequency, and very specifically what gamma does is bind together all the sensory information from different parts of the cortex from my 5 senses and bind it all together so that my experience out here makes sense with my 5 senses. There are other mechanisms that are involved in that. For instance, that gamma, we now know, synchronizes with theta, generated from the hippocampus, which is the emotional control centers that wrap around the hypothalamus where the autonomic nervous system is, and the emotions are hardwired. All of this is all hardwired in the autonomic nervous system. So this gamma modulating theta lifts all of the gamma binding right out of the brain in a frequency modulation like FM radio, and lifts it out of the brain into an internet communication network of the brain that's wireless. Once we understand that principle, that gamma can combine with theta and modulate it and lift the information out of the brain, recent research, which will be another broadcast, I'm telling you, because I was the first to put forth the idea and the concept of the borderline brain states and have been using those clinically for decades. The concept of the borderline between beta and alpha and theta and delta, where the borderline between beta alpha is IQ and alpha theta is the flow state, and on like that. Now we're realizing that that the brain has broken out of that now we have combination brain waves that are not adjacent to each other. They're not borderlines to each other. It's gamma, which is way up at 40 hertz, and theta, which is down at 5 hertz, combining together, and they're not borderlines of each other. And the most recent research has showed that gamma combines with alpha, it combines with theta, it combines with delta, and all for different purposes. So this is a whole new thing. I mean, it's already blowing my mind that I'm recognizing and working with 22 different brain states when everybody else is still stuck with the original 4. Some recognize gamma and have 5, but to have 22 and have an explanation and scientific backing for each one. And now we realize that there's more than that. If gamma can combine with alpha, there's another one, that's 23. If it combines with theta, that's 24. If it combines with delta, that's 25. Who says it can't, combine with epsilon, 26, default mode network, 27, iota, 28, and, there is potential, and it might just not be gamma. It might be, beta combines with theta, and beta combines with delta, and beta combines with epsilon, and alpha combines with delta, and alpha combines with epsilon. There's potential for dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of brainwave states that all have very specific things, states of consciousness that happen with each one of those. That's where our research is going. But really what this is talking about is the binding together, the unified perception of the world from a qualia standpoint. That the qualities of each of those 5 senses and what they're experiencing bound together to make a whole is a different ballgame than the simple gamma modulating theta and lifting it into a wireless network. The fact that it's lifting into a wireless network is already sort of mind-blowing, but lifting it into a wireless network is more and more and more what we see is really going on, that the mind is not in the brain at all. It's in a wireless network in the universe, and that's what Qualia is pointing out. Scientist reveals quantum entanglement may explain the mind existing as a field separate from the brain. That's this guy, Dr. Dirk Meijer. You're going to see a lot about him as we go on. Dirk Meijer. Dr. Dirk Meijer, a professor at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, hypothesizes that consciousness resides in a field surrounding the brain, a field which lies in another dimension. It shares information with the brain through a concept known as quantum entanglement, among other processes, which we'll discuss. This has certain similarities with a black whole. So you see what I'm talking about here. It's the mind may reside in another spatial dimension. When one comes to the essence of being, the shining wisdom of reality illuminates all, like the cloudless sky. Quantum breakthrough. Scientists rethink the nature of reality. Quantum physicists from Hiroshima University have revealed that the results of quantum measurements are fundamentally tied to the interaction dynamics between the measuring device and the system, challenging traditional views of fixed physical properties and suggesting that reality is shaped by the context of these interactions. Their findings point to a need to rethink the interpretation of quantum experimental data. And it's not just quantum data that's being, this is the Heisenberg principle, and the fact that making an observation changes the observed. Setting up an experiment to measure an atomic effect or a subatomic effect, the act of measuring it and observing it changes the observed. So you're in this terrible conundrum of sort of playing whack-a-mole with reality. You can't measure it without changing it, so you can never see it in its ground state because you would have to be absent from it for it to be in its ground state. It's the double slit experiment where, if I'm looking at it, the photons are acting as particles going through the two slits and making two white lines. If I look away, it acts like a wave. It goes back to its wave state. And when waves go through the two slits, they interact with each other and create multiple lines. As I turn my head and take a look, and the multiple lines all disappear, and we get two lines because the wave has collapsed when I observe. The potentiality to be anything collapse into a specific thing when consciousness arrives on the scene. Way back in the beginning, this began with the Schrödinger cat paradox conundrum. You don't know whether it's a living cat or a dead cat until you lift the lid and take a look. Consciousness arrives on the scene, and one of those two possibilities in its probability wave form collapses into its particle form as a specific thing, living cat or dead cat. Neurons, consciousness, and qualia. The relationship between neurons, consciousness, and qualia is a central theme in the philosophy of mind and neuroscience. The discussion revolves around the question of how physical processes in the brain, that is, the activity of neurons, can lead to subjective experiences called qualia. The subjective experience of what type of red or what type of taste of an apple. Quantum breakthrough. Oh, wait a second, that's the wrong way. Neurons are the basic building blocks of the nervous system and are responsible for transmitting information through electrical and chemical signals. Consciousness refers to the experience of perceptions, thoughts, and feelings, what it means to experience something. Qualia are the subjective qualities of experience, that is, how it feels to experience something, such as the redness of a rose or the sweetness of sugar. Some qualia are elemental, the color yellow, the abrupt and overpowering pain of a muscle spasm in the lower back, or the feeling of familiarity and déjà vu. Others are composites, the smell and feel of my dog snuggling up against me, the aha of sudden understanding, or the distinct memory of being utterly transfixed when I first heard the immortal lines, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Transhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain, time to die. To have an experience means to have qualia, and the qualia of an experience are what specifies that experience and makes it different from other experiences. Yeah, I mean, yeah, how mind-blowing is that? You know, I think all of us have seen this film, and this is one of the most famous moments of that film, because it really is speaking about the concept of qualia in this film. And when was this film made? Like 20 years ago? Amazing. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. Sea beams glittering in the dark near the Transhauser Gate. A new theory of consciousness. The mind exists as a field connected to the brain. So, and as I said, here we go. Fasten your seatbelts, because everything up to this point is just preliminary. We're going to get down into the deep depths of what this all means and how it translates out into the nature of reality and personal subjective experience of reality, which is what it's all about. There's an infinite number of standpoints of viewing every story that could ever be told in every dimension possible in all past and future events, all simultaneously folded into now. And each one of those standpoints of the story is a personal experience that no other standpoint has. So it's an infinite number of qualia experiences, even people experiencing the same thing in that particular story. Everybody sitting in the woods seeing a butterfly, but no two viewpoints of that butterfly or sitting in the woods are the same. Each is unique and separate and different from each other. So as I said, here we go. The mind may reside in another spatial dimension. Now, that guy that I mentioned before, Meijer, hypothesized that the mental field is in another dimension, that we cannot directly perceive this information aspect is traditionally ascribed to a hidden fourth spatial dimension, which cannot be observed in our three-dimensional world, but can be mathematically derived. The math shows it. We can't see it with our small minds. He clarified that this fourth spatial dimension is not time. Time is commonly described as the fourth dimension. Rather, this is a concept of space-time that includes 4 spatial dimensions plus time. It's called the 4+1 space-time structure theory. So there will be references to the 4+1 space-time, which is this new theory that what we've considered, all along as being, we live in a three-dimensional universe of an XYZ coordinate in space-time, and then there's time as the fourth dimension. And, what he's saying is he cited studies that have suggested this concept of dimensions could reconcile the mismatches between traditional physics and quantum physics that plague scientists today. The mind would exist in a fourth spatial dimension. So he's proposing, and the math shows, that if you allow for the 3 dimensions that we experience and a fourth dimension of consciousness in that spatial dimension, and time as a 5th dimension, another dimension, then all of a sudden a lot of different conundrums in physics and quantum physics get solved. once you look at it that way. So he's actually proposing that we throw away a time-honored foundation of physics that 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 places us in a third dimension that has 3 coordinates. He's saying no, they've got 4 coordinates, and the 4th one is consciousness itself. That consciousness is more and more recognized in quantum physics as being a foundation of reality. The scientific community years ago had this news conference I talked about, where they announced that it is now recognized that consciousness is a requirement for reality to exist. A requirement. It's not just something that is spinning off as a byproduct of electrical activity in neurons in your brain, some kind of ghost in the machine. It's a foundational aspect of reality itself, which means it deserves to have itself established as a bona fide dimension, a 4th dimension, that 3 dimensions of XYZ coordinate in space-time, and consciousness as a 4th dimension intertwined with all of that, and time as a 5th dimension. The structure of the hypothesized mental field would take the shape of a torus. Now, we've talked about this before as well. The torus is closely aligned with how we envision wormholes. That black holes have spin. That a black hole is not just a thing that's sucking things down. A black hole is like a vortex that's sucking things down. It's like, filling your sink with water and pulling the plug and watching the water go down. It just doesn't go straight down. It goes down with spin. And the reason it goes down with spin is because the Earth is spinning, right? And the Earth is spinning on its axis, and the Earth is spinning around the sun. And the sun is spinning around the black hole at the center of our galaxy. And the galaxy is a spinning vortex as it goes down the drain of that black hole, which means that the black hole itself is spinning. And it's not just Meijer that is putting this forth, that the shape of that black hole is a torus, where you might have a black hole at this end and a black hole at this end, and you've got a wormhole connecting the 2 of those together that's got spin. The nested torus structure suggested by Dr. Dirk Meijer for the mental field connected to the brain. So not only is there a torus field around the brain from the activity of consciousness in the brain, but it's a double toroid field, and that field is connected to larger fields in the universe at large, as we will see. The nested aspect of the tori suggests that multiple toroidal fields exist within one another, creating layers or scales. These layers may interact with each other, where information, energy, or awareness flows between them. The nested tori represent different scales of consciousness, from individual consciousness to collective or even cosmic levels of consciousness, of awareness. Each torus can represent various mental or conscious activities, with larger tori possibly symbolizing more complex or global processes of awareness, while smaller tori handle individual, localized processes like thoughts or emotion. This brings to mind what we're doing here, that according to this Qualia Field Theory, when we link ourselves together in a mind link, we may be tapping into ever expanded onion skin layers of the toroidal nature of the Qualia field, as we step from personal to group to cosmic awareness experiences, shifting into different toroidal fields that align with that. Dr. Meijer also connects his thoughts, his concept, to holographic theory and fractal geometry. And I have spent so many live streams talking about the fact that everything is a fractal hologram of each other, reflected in miniature in my body. Body is a textbook of universal law, reflected in the cosmos, and reflected in the smallest of the small. The torus is considered fractal because its shape repeats itself at different scales, from the personal level of consciousness to the universal or cosmic consciousness. Each part contains information about the whole, a property of holograms, suggesting that the mind holds a holographic representation of reality, and not just a representation of reality, but a representation of reality at all possible scales, to the largest to the smallest, held in fractal holographic information fragments within my personal toroidal field that's connected to all the rest. Another theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or ORC-OR, which I've talked about before, was developed by physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff, which on Hameroff's website he describes thus: it suggests consciousness arises from quantum vibrations in protein polymers called microtubules inside the brain's neurons, which I did a whole live stream on. This concept of resonant fields in the microtubules, which are crystalline structure lattices that lend themselves to generating electromagnetic discharges, piezoelectric discharges from pressure waves from sound, where sound waves that are generated from the thalamus, globs on each side, globular kind of networks on each side of the upper brainstem, generate and control brainwave activity by putting pressure on the microtubules inside the neurons of your brain, causing piezoelectric discharges and transferring that pressure wave down the axons, and at the leading edge of that wave, putting pressure on the microtubules is causing a succession of piezoelectric discharges down the axon that is read by EEG as the electricity of your neurons on EEG caused by sound waves. Like Meijer, Penrose, and Hameroff believe there is a connection between the brain's biomolecular processes and the basic structure of the universe. They have also called for a major change in how scientists view consciousness. The major change is consciousness gets its own dimension, right? The 3 dimensions of XYZ coordinates, and the 4th dimension is consciousness, and the 5th dimension is time. Now, these guys are no slouches. I mean, Sir Roger Penrose won the Nobel Prize in Physics. These aren't just weirdo guys. These are the smartest guys on the planet putting forth these ideas. This is Dr. Hameroff, who's an anesthesiologist who works with Penrose. If we're right, and consciousness is an intrinsic feature of the universe, connecting us through multiple layers down to the fundamental space-time geometry that would define our place in the universe, define the place of consciousness itself as a foundational aspect of the universe and its architecture. And this is Dr. Dirk Meijer, who put forth the whole concept of the Qualia field, and that interfaces with the two of these previous guys. Phonon dispersion and solitons in crystalline solids. Now, you've been with me long enough to know that phonons are the quantum particle of sound, as photons are the quantum particle of light. Solitons is a new idea. A soliton is a single sound wave that appears to be standing still. That means it's actually another word for a standing wave. Phonon dispersion and solitons or standing waves in crystalline solids, which means crystalline solids are what? Microtubules. And crystalline solids are crystals, like in the pineal gland. And the whole body, all the, 70% of the water and fluid in the body and 80% in the brain is biological water that balances on the razor edge of a fluid, a water on one hand, and a liquid crystal on the other. And what makes the difference is pressure waves of sound. The statement phonon dispersion in solitons and crystalline solids refers to the study of how phonons, which are quantum mechanical vibrations or sound waves within a crystal lattice, like a crystal, like sound waves within a crystal lattice propagate and spread, as well as how solitons, which are stable localized waves or standing waves, form and move through these structured solid materials without dissipating over time. They don't dissipate over time because they're standing waves, and there's a pressure wave that is continuous, and that pressure wave is a universal phenomenon. It also, once again, in all kinds of different scales. The largest scale that we've measured so far, we call it gravity waves, but those are sound waves moving through the universe at extremely slow speeds, so they look frozen to us. And their crest-to-crest peaks of that wave are sometimes, 100 light years from peak to peak, that has, whole galaxies riding on that wave, so that the galaxies look like this. They're not flat. They're curved as they follow the curve of these sound waves, gravity waves. The mind could be like a black hole. Meidger envisions a sort of screen or boundary between the outside world and the individual mental field. He likens this boundary to the event horizon of a black hole. It is assumed that information entering a black hole from the outside is not lost, but rather is being projected on its outer screen, called the event horizon. Consciousness is a boundary condition between the singularity, black hole, and space within the brain, he added, noting that the event horizon separates a mental model of reality for internal use in each individual from all that exists outside of it. Yet it is connected to a universal information matrix. This dynamic holographic boundary collects information from inside the brain as well as from the information fields in which our brains permanently embedded in the universe. In this manner, it is implicitly connected to a universal information matrix. Now, if you remember previous broadcasts where we talked about the Schwarzschild proton, that at the center of each atom in your body, in the nucleus of that atom where the protons and the neutrons exist, the proton itself is a black hole. That means our whole body is populated with trillions of black holes. And the ones that make up the neurons in our brain is what this guy's talking about, that we have this conglomeration of black holes and neurons. The neurons are firing together in waves of depolarization that sweep across the cortex in different speeds. And the speeds of those depolarizations somehow are deeply linked to consciousness itself, beta, alpha, theta, delta, and all the rest. But underlying that whole process are all of these black holes that are also functioning as an array. All these, neurons are functioning as one giant neuron, like the, array in New Mexico of satellite dishes. They all turn at the same time. That's an array, and they're all functioning as the biggest dish on Earth. Just as all the neurons are function together as the biggest neuron, a single neuron in the brain, single black hole that's projecting reality on the event horizon. That is the interface between my personal space and the universal space at large. The harmonic background in the fabric of reality. So this whole concept of the black holes being a torus, having a torus spin, and the layers and layers of the toroid. So it's toroids within toroids within toroids that get larger and larger, and each one of those is a step transformer for defining my personal consciousness and cosmic consciousness and every kind of step in between. One of those steps is all of us listening to a soundtrack, creating a global mind link that gives us access to a larger toroid black hole field. What this chart is saying is that all of these toroid fields nested all the way down to the quantum field at the bottom and to the biggest universal field that you can imagine. And they're all connected together as fractal holograms reflecting in and out of each other, and all of them the same sort of scale invariant. Every scale looks the same from its standpoint. All of those are based on harmonics and overtones that we see in music theory, that each toroid is filled with vibrational resonances, and the toroid that this is nested inside of, and the toroids that are nested inside of this one, also have these harmonic fields. That means toroid to toroid to toroid, as you go out and in, are relating one to the other according to music theory, that they're forming harmonic chords of vibrational frequencies, that the universe really is this giant chord of vibrational frequencies that are related to each other by what we currently know as music theory, the relationship between frequencies that form chords that seem to be pleasing to our brains. These relationships between tones and their harmonics form standing waves, solitons, inside the microtubules of each neuron in your brain, and form the giant patterns in the universe at large and everything in between. And all of it is interaction between these standing waves of various frequencies related mathematically to each other, like sand on the plate. Remember, all of this is not flat like the sand on the plate. It's spherical, according to spherical harmonics that I did a whole live stream on, that these are spherical nested toroids going further and further inwards and further outwards, and all of them related to each other and communicating with each other through the language of music theory. Now, I have a personal relationship to the universe in a way that periodically I'll have these crazy dreams that wake me up in the middle of the night, and it's like, oh my God, that's not a dream, that's information, I've got to write this down. I've had quite a series of those. I never know when they're going to come, but I bless the event when it happens, because it's always a mind blower. And one of these, almost, I think 25, almost 30 years ago, was this dream where it became clear that the harmonic relationships of tones to their harmonic third and fifth were all related to each other in a huge pattern that I called the harmonic triad. And I was drawing this thing in my dream, and it woke me up, and I had to draw that down before it left my brain. Here's the drawing that I called the harmonic triad. This is the original drawing. So you can see that this and this are the harmonic third. There's the 3 and there's the 5. The harmonic third and fifth of A and then C sharp, this is the harmonic third and fifth of that. E, this is the harmonic third and fifth of that, and it stretches out and moves out through 7 different layers, that's 1 octave, until it arrives at A again. So it turns out that when you look at this chart, every black and white key on the keyboard is a harmonic of every other note on the keyboard. They're all harmonically related to each other. It's just that the fundamental and its third and fifth are special, particularly the fifth because it's very close to the golden section ratio, the Fibonacci series that has sort of deep subconscious recognition at the primordial mind. The part of my mind that designed the universe used that mathematical formula of the Fibonacci series and the golden section ratio to design the sacred geometries of reality itself. So if I have a chord that's made of a fundamental and its harmonic fifth, it's striking a chord, so to speak, inside of my deepest unconscious mind, which wakes up and says, I recognize that chord. It's a foundational mathematical music sequence I use to design the whole universe, including everything in my body. The harmonic triad. As a matter of fact, I dug it up. Here it is. Here's my original drawing that I made of the harmonic triad years and years ago. Extending quantum mechanics to account for consciousness. And so once again, here we go. We're about to dive down into the rabbit hole. So fasten your seatbelt because here we go. I hate to do this to you, but we're about to drop down the rabbit hole, and we're going to pick apart the fine details of the Qualia field and how the interface of my personal consciousness and the qualities that I experience of reality are related to the universal whole. Maybe we should actually call this, not Alice falls down the rabbit hole, but Alice falls down the multidimensional rabbit hole, the Qualia rabbit hole. So with that being said, here we go. So the Qualia field, the characteristics of the Qualia field. Qualia field theory suggests that qualia, the subjective components of perceptions, may arise as an interaction between brain processes in a universal field, analogous to quantum field in physics. So we're going to explore the theoretical possibility that the human brain interacts with this Qualia field, decoding and translating these fundamental elements of experience into conscious perception in the brain. So, the brain decoding, brain as decoder. In the framework of Qualia Field Theory, we propose that the brain acts much like a radio receiver, tuned to detect and decode signals from the Qualia field. Selective sensitivity. Just as a radio receiver is designed to tune into specific frequencies from a broad spectrum of radio waves, the brain may have evolved structures that are particularly sensitive to specific frequencies or types of information within the Qualia field. These structures could be specialized regions of the brain or particular types of neurons that are optimally configured to interact with the field or they could be brainwaves themselves, certain types of brainwaves, or relationships between brainwaves, or patterns of brainwave frequencies nested together. Resonance mechanisms. The brain might use resonance mechanisms to amplify certain signals from the qualia field. Resonance in neural circuits could enhance specific qualia signals over others, making them more prominent in consciousness. This could be akin to adjusting the bandwidth or the gain on a radio to improve reception quality. Neural oscillations. Neural oscillations, or brainwaves, could play a crucial role in how the brain synchronizes with the qualia field. Different frequencies of neural oscillations might correspond to different types of qualia, enabling the brain to access a wide spectrum of subjective experiences through phase locking or entrainment with the field. That's brainwave entrainment can aid that process. It's a new understanding of the power of putting out a set of headphones and entraining the brainwaves to some state that we know elicits a certain state of consciousness. This points out that the subtleties of what kind of brainwave interactions with the qualia field might tune in that channel better is what our research at CNR is all about, is delving those fields and bringing a new level of specificity, a sort of a clinical science of brainwave entrainment that has no place else in the world. That highly specific brainwave frequencies that are exhibited by your particular brain from this concept of biotuning, where you use heart rate variability to find a frequency that balances the nervous system at a 0 point and calculate all the octaves and harmonics from that. And some of those way down below are brainwave frequencies that are specific to a few decimal points. And in training to that level of specificity, now has the possibility of aligning neural oscillations with the qualia field directly and gaining levels of insight and information that no one's individual brain has access to. Transduction of field signals. Upon receiving signals from the qualia field, the brain must transduce these non-material interactions into neurochemical signals. This process could involve quantum biological processes that convert field interactions into changes in neuronal excitability or neurotransmitter release patterns. That there is a direct relationship between resonance fields in the qualia field and resonance fields in the brain and resonance fields in the microtubules inside the neurons of each neuron in your brain that set themselves up to fire together in waves of depolarization. This series of steps of mechanisms from the qualia field to actual firing of the neurons and patterns of brain activity that lead to qualia experiences inside myself is what science up to this point has had no answer to. And Meijer is proposing a solution where he is outlining every step in that process from qualia field to qualia experience in a personal realm. That's why this is so important and mind-blowing. Information integration. The various pieces of information received from the qualia field would need to be integrated within the brain's existing neural networks. This integration allows for coherent conscious experiences to arise, synthesizing raw qualia inputs into a unified perceptual experience that corresponds to the external and internal environment, synchronizes what's happening outside and inside through a series of processes based on resonance, quantum fields, electromagnetic discharges from microtubules, and the resonant toroid torque fields of the black holes inside of each atom that makes up the microtubules and the atoms of the neurons. Feedback abilities. The brain might not only passively receive information from the Qualia field, but could also send feedback into that field, altering its state of receptivity. This dynamic interaction could be crucial for adapting to changing environments and for the development of complex cognitive functions such as attention and awareness. And more than that, if the brain is a processor that can allow the qualia universal field to interact with brain neurons and cause things to fire and create conscious experiences, then conscious experiences can affect the qualia field directly by broadcasting signals out into the field. It's not just a passive receiver. It can become an active broadcasting tower of experiences into the qualia field. That's completely sort of mind-blowing. Manipulating brain resonances, this idea that we can manipulate brainwaves with binaural beats and brainwave entrainment in order to access my personal qualia experience, and because of that, link right into the qualia field in the universe and receive and broadcast and change the field, which can change my experience. Be and the universe forming a partnership to mold reality. Microtubules in qualia, a hypothesis that quantum processes within neuronal microtubules contribute to consciousness, is intriguing when considering the nature of qualia, the vivid, subjective qualities of human experiences, such as the redness of red or the pain of a headache. The theory posits that quantum coherence and subjective collapse within these microtubule structures are not merely incidental, but integral to generating the rich tapestry of qualia that form the core of conscious experience. That this microtubule resonances that link the toroidal fields of the black holes that are harmonically related mathematically to larger dimensions of the onion skin of these toroidal fields out into the qualia field are instrumental in linking the qualia field and conscious experience itself. The microtubules are showing themselves to be more and more and more important all the time and crucial to the whole experience of consciousness in reality. ORC-R and qualia. Orchestrated Objective Reduction is what ORC-R stands for. So back to Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff. They're the ones who have put forth the ORC-R theory. And remember, these guys are no slouch. One of them is a Nobel Prize winner, where they state the orchestrated reduction of quantum states in microtubules directly correlates with discrete conscious moments, potentially bridging objective physical processes with subjective experiential content. This mechanism might provide a fundamental model for understanding how complex neural substrates give rise to specific subjective phenomenon we identify as qualia. Thalamocortical loops. Now, I actually discussed the thalamus at one point in one broadcast. There is another brain structure that is becoming more and more profound in its importance in this whole mix. You know, the thalamus is, the brainstem comes up, and the cerebellum is on either side, and the higher up brainstem structures lead to the thalamus on the right and the thalamus on the left, which are these round structures. Now, not only are they the gateway, the grand central station of signals coming up, and they're compartmentalized into different divisions that all have names, and the signals that come up go to their department, and that department sends them up into the cortex for finer degrees of evaluation. But remember that the hypothalamus, hypo means underneath or under, just underneath the thalamus on either side is the central structure called the hypothalamus, which is where the autonomic nervous system is, and all of this stuff is hardwired together. And the autonomic nervous system is functioning to control all of the vegetative under the hood functioning that's automatic, that just goes on by itself, so that consciousness is free to do something else and not have to run this system. This system is the biological automated machine that gives me the ability to be alive and have this part free to pursue what? To pursue the meaning of reality and to witness reality in all of its magnificence and to explore the depth of it so that the universe itself can experience the qualia of what it has created from every possible standpoint at once of all the beings and all the creatures and all of the multiverse, of a multifaceted view of reality for the standpoint of the godhood, so to speak. So this concept of thalamocortical loops, the thalamus creating conduit information transfer between the thalamus and the cortex, the gray matter of the cortex. These loops are significant in the modulation and maintenance of consciousness and are theorized to play a central role in the continuity and coherence of qualia. The thalamus acts as a relay station, modulating the information that is sent to different parts of the cortex, which in turn interprets and consciously experiences this information as qualia. Field-sensitive structures. Hypothetically, certain brain structures could be more susceptible or responsive to qualia field based on their electromagnetic properties or quantum mechanical features, such as microtubular functions within neurons. These structures might act as antennae or interfaces with the qualia field, receiving and translating non-local field signals into local neuronal activities that correspond to subjective experiences. A constant give and take between structures in the brain that processes the qualia field, back and forth coming from the qualia field, creating experiences in my brain, and those experiences projecting back out into the qualia field through the multi-stage mechanisms that we're sort of outlining here. The mechanisms of field influence. So if we speculate that the brain interacts with the qualia field, it might do so through a mechanism akin to resonance or entanglement, where the brain's quantum state becomes aligned with that of the qualia field. This alignment could influence neural activity patterns that are then perceived as specific qualia. Neural activity patterns, brainwave patterns associated with specific states of consciousness. But once again, this whole thing is pointing out that consciousness is not in the brain. Consciousness is in this qualia field, and our brains are stuck into that field and related to that field through the activity of the toroid spin nature of black holes inside the protons of every atom in your body that are making the structure of the microtubules that have pressure waves moving through them that's generating electrical impulses that we read as EEG, and the waves of those depolarization are equaling different experiences of consciousness. And all these mechanisms, all these gears linked together that are grinding and tuned up together are based on music theory, as the toroid nature is a series of harmonic frequency resonances nested together between toroids and toroids and toroids, like a big onion skin, going as large as you could ever imagine and as small down to the Planck length as you can think of. So this concept of mechanisms of field influence, where our individual consciousness can enter into the field and have access to all scales of the onion, where the smallest scales are quantum, mid scales are my personal qualia experiences of consciousness that I am experiencing even at this moment, and the possibility of linking to onion skins outside of my own personal experience into group experiences, where the group qualia field becomes a thing. The group qualia field, where your personal qualia experience meets the qualia experiences of other people. So the possibility here of aligning qualia experiences of large groups of people together to create a new type of qualia experience where everybody becomes a sort of a one mind, where everyone is having the same qualia experience. That's pretty much us here, doing this, doing what we do here. It's just a deeper understanding of what might be going on that appears to be something pretty simple by putting a set of headphones on and playing some brainwave entrainment soundtrack. These are brainwave entrainment soundtracks to guide your brainwaves to a specific qualia experience. And every person in that group is having their own qualia experience, but there is a possibility of aligning all of us together over time enough that we create sort of a mind meld experience and have a similar qualia experience together as one mind. And that's, again, something to ponder and consider. I would just kind of sort of say that I think it would be a very cool idea that pay attention to the quality of the experience that you're having today with the soundtrack. That something is going to happen, and every one of us is going to have some kind of interesting experience with this soundtrack. There's going to be sensations, there's going to be emotions, there's going to be maybe dream imagery and visions, and those are going to have people and colors and smells and things and whatever. All these are qualia experiences by orchestrating your brain into some certain state that is, linked to brain waves and the qualia field and all the rest of the stuff I've discussed here. But I would love to know, what's the qualia experience that you have today? we've got a format where we can share that with each other. I think it would be very interesting for all of us to see what each other is experiencing when we put these headphones on and have this experience for the next 20 minutes. What happened to you? Where did you go? What did you experience? Let's I think it'd be cool to share that with each other in the Discord channel after this whole thing is over. So bear that in mind. And here we go. Thank you all for being here with me. My great joy and honor to do these broadcasts and be with all of you. I just want to say before I turn this over to just leaving the chat going for another 30 minutes, I did want to acknowledge that a large part of the information at the very end it came from a consolidation from this website. This is an excellent overview of Qualia Field Theory. It was on Reddit. I was going to post this in chat, but my chat is on another computer and I don't have this address saved that I can transfer there. So I will post this in Discord in the channel so you don't have to copy this down. This is a pretty long, complicated address here. So if you want to see source material for some of the material that I used in this broadcast towards the end, go here. It's pretty cool. Meantime, have a good week. Stay happy and healthy and holy. And I'm going to turn this over to chat for another 30 minutes, and then I'll go off to the Discord channel. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.